He can never find out. It would destroy him. My wife's voice, crackling through the baby monitor on my nightstand, 2:47 a.m. I'd woken up to use the bathroom and heard voices coming from downstairs. Hushed, urgent, the kind of conversation people have when they think no one's listening. I should have gone back to sleep, should have assumed it was the TV or a phone call or anything other than what it was. Instead, I picked up the monitor. "I know," said another voice. "Rachel, my wife's best friend since college. But Sarah, you've been carrying this for 10 years. 10 years! That's not sustainable. What choice do I have?" My wife's voice broke. "If I tell him the truth about that night, about what really happened, everything falls apart. Our marriage, our family, everything." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do." A pause, a shaky breath. "He thinks he knows who I am. He thinks he knows our story. But it's all been built on a lie, Rachel. Our whole life together. And I don't know how much longer I can pretend." I sat frozen in our bed, the monitor pressed to my ear, listening to my wife cry in our kitchen at 3 in the morning. Have you ever heard something you weren't supposed to hear? Something that changed everything in an instant? I'm asking because I need to know I'm not alone in this. Drop your answer in the comments. Tell me if you've ever had a moment where the floor just disappeared beneath you. Let me back up. My name is James. I'm 38 years old. I work in software development, coach my son's soccer team on weekends, and until 3 weeks ago, I thought I had the perfect marriage. Sarah and I met 12 years ago at a friend's wedding. She was a bridesmaid, I was a groomsman. We ended up at the same table during dinner, and by the end of the night, I knew I was going to marry her. She was beautiful, still is, but it wasn't just that. She had this warmth about her, this way of making you feel like you were the most important person in the room. When she listened, she listened. When she laughed, it was real. We dated for 2 years, got engaged, got married in a small ceremony at her parents' lake house. Had our son, Oliver, 3 years later. Bought a house in the suburbs with a backyard big enough for a dog and a swing set. It was everything I ever wanted. It was a lie. I didn't sleep the rest of that night, just lay there in the dark, listening to Sarah come back upstairs around 4 a.m. Felt the mattress dip as she slid in beside me. Heard her whisper, "I love you," before she fell asleep. I didn't say it back. I pretended to be asleep. The words kept echoing in my head. A lie. Our whole life together. Built on a lie. What lie? What had happened that night? What was she hiding? I needed to find out. I became someone I didn't recognize. For the next 2 weeks, I watched my wife like she was a stranger. Analyzed every word, every gesture, every moment of eye contact for signs of deception. She was good, I'll give her that. If I hadn't heard that conversation, I never would have suspected anything was wrong. She kissed me goodbye every morning, asked about my day every evening, made love to me with what seemed like genuine passion. But now I saw the cracks. The way she sometimes stared into space, lost in thoughts she never shared. The slight tension in her jaw when I mentioned our wedding anniversary. The occasional flicker of something. Guilt? Fear? When she looked at our son? 10 years, Rachel had said. She'd been carrying this for 10 years. Oliver was 9. The math wasn't hard. I started to wonder if my son was actually mine. The thought made me physically sick. I'd been there for everything. The pregnancy, the birth, the first steps, the first words. I'd held him when he cried and cheered when he scored goals and read him bedtime stories until my voice went hoarse. He was my son. He had my eyes, my stubborn streak, my terrible singing voice. But what if he wasn't? What if that night Sarah mentioned was an affair? What if she'd gotten pregnant by someone else and passed the child off as mine? What if everything I loved was built on a lie? I started going through her things. I'm not proud of it. I waited until she took Oliver to soccer practice and then searched our house like a detective at a crime scene. Her phone was locked, but I knew the passcode, ironically. I scrolled through her texts, her emails, her photos, looking for evidence, looking for proof of whatever she was hiding. I found nothing. No suspicious messages, no deleted conversations, no photos of another man or evidence of a secret life. Either she was innocent or she was very, very careful. I almost gave up, almost convinced myself I'd misheard, misunderstood, blown everything out of proportion. Then I found the box. It was in the back of her closet, behind a stack of old sweaters. A small wooden box with a lock on it, the kind you'd buy at an antique store. I'd never seen it before. The lock was flimsy. I broke it with a screwdriver, hands shaking, heart pounding. Inside, a stack of papers, medical records, a police report, and a newspaper clipping from 11 years ago. Local man in critical condition after hit and run, asterisk. The article was dated March 15, 2014, 1 month before Sarah and I got engaged. I read it 3 times, trying to understand why my wife had kept this hidden for over a decade. Then I saw the location of the accident. It was on Riverside Drive, the same street where we'd had our second date, the same street where I'd told Sarah I loved her for the first time, the same street I had absolutely no memory of driving on the night of March 14, 2014. Because that was the night of my buddy's bachelor party. The night I'd gotten so drunk I blacked out completely. The night I woke up in my apartment with no idea how I'd gotten home. My hands started shaking so badly I dropped the papers. No, this couldn't be what I thought it was. This couldn't be about me. I need to tell you about that night, March 14th, 2014. My best friend Marcus's bachelor party. A group of 8 guys, a rented party bus, and enough alcohol to kill a horse. I don't remember most of it. I remember shots at the first bar. I remember someone putting a crown on Marcus's head. I remember laughing so hard I couldn't tell you what was funny. After that, nothing. Just blackness. A void where memories should be. I woke up the next morning in my own bed, still in my clothes, with the worst hangover of my life and no idea how I'd gotten there. I'd asked the other guys about it later. They said I'd left early, around midnight, claiming I didn't feel well. Said I'd called an Uber and headed home. I accepted that explanation. I'd been drunk enough to forget, and everyone else was too wasted to pay attention. These things happen. I never questioned it. But now, sitting on my closet floor with a decade-old newspaper article in my hands, I started to question everything. The accident had happened at 12:23 a.m., Riverside Drive, about 2 miles from the bar where the party started. A man named Thomas Reeves, 34, had been struck by a vehicle while walking home. The driver hadn't stopped. Thomas had spent 3 months in a coma before waking up with permanent brain damage. The police had never found the driver. The case had gone cold. I pulled out the other papers from Sarah's box. Police reports, medical records, but not for Thomas Reeves. For M.E., medical records from the free clinic Sarah had worked at before she got her nursing degree. Dated March 15, 2014. Patient, James Whitfield. Chief complaint, laceration to right hand, possible concussion. Patient states he fell while intoxicated. Wound cleaned and sutured. Advised to follow up with primary care physician. I turned my right hand over. There, faded but visible, was a thin scar I'd had so long I'd forgotten it existed. I told Sarah I'd cut myself on a broken glass. She'd believed me. Or had she? I kept reading. Beneath the medical records was a handwritten note on clinic letterhead. Sarah's handwriting. I'd recognize it anywhere. James came in tonight. He was disoriented, possibly concussed, with a cut on his hand and what looked like impact damage on his jacket sleeve. He doesn't remember anything after leaving the party. He doesn't remember how he got to the clinic. He doesn't remember me finding him. I was driving home from my shift when I saw him stumbling down Riverside Drive. His car was pulled over about a quarter-mile back, front bumper dented, headlight cracked. He was walking away from it like he didn't know where he was. I stopped. I helped him into my car. I drove him to the clinic and patched him up and took him home. I didn't call the police. I should have called the police. But I love him. God help me, I love him. And I couldn't watch them take him away. I went back later and moved his car, drove it to his apartment building, parked it in his spot like nothing had happened. No one will ever know. No one can ever know. I don't know how long I sat there. Minutes? Hours? My wife had covered up a hit and run. My hit and run. I'd nearly killed a man, and Sarah had buried the evidence. She'd been carrying my crime for 10 years, and I hadn't remembered any of it. I understood now. The confession I'd overheard wasn't about her secrets. It was about mine. The lie she'd been living with wasn't something she'd done. It was something she'd done for me. She'd sacrificed her integrity, her peace of mind, her ability to look at herself in the mirror, all to protect me from the consequences of my own actions, actions I couldn't even remember. I put everything back in the box, put the box back in the closet, went downstairs and poured myself a drink and sat in the dark trying to process what I'd learned. I was a criminal, a hit-and-run driver. I'd left a man bleeding on the street and walked away. And the only reason I wasn't in prison was because my girlfriend had loved me enough to destroy evidence and lie to the police.
Thomas Reeves had spent 3 months in a coma. The article said he had permanent brain damage. He'd lost his career, his independence, his entire life. Because of me. Because I'd gotten drunk and decided to drive. I didn't remember making that decision. Didn't remember getting behind the wheel. Didn't remember the impact, the panic, the flight. It was all just gone. Erased by alcohol and trauma and whatever defense mechanisms the brain uses to protect itself from unbearable truth. But just because I didn't remember didn't mean it hadn't happened. Sarah came home an hour later, Oliver bouncing beside her, excited about scoring 2 goals at practice. "Daddy, Daddy, did you hear? I scored twice." I hugged my son and told him I was proud and felt something shatter inside me. This child, this perfect, innocent child. His father was a monster. His mother was the only reason the monster was still free. "You okay?" Sarah asked, studying my face. "You look pale." "Fine, just a headache. I'll get you some Advil." She kissed my forehead, gentle, caring. The same woman who'd cleaned my wounds and hidden my car and told the police she didn't know anything. I watched her walk to the medicine cabinet, and I felt a wave of something I couldn't name. Not anger, not betrayal. Gratitude? Guilt? Horror? She'd given up her soul for me. She'd been living in hell for 10 years, carrying a secret that had obviously been destroying her. And she'd never once asked for anything in return. She'd never even told me what she'd done. She just carried it, alone. How do you repay something like that? How do you even begin? I couldn't leave it alone. I needed to know more. About that night, about Thomas Reeves, about the full scope of what I'd done and what Sarah had hidden. I started researching. Thomas Reeves, 34 at the time of the accident, would be 45 now if he was still alive. He'd been a high school English teacher before the accident, beloved by his students. Had a wife and 2 young kids. According to the news archives, his wife had divorced him 2 years after the accident. Couldn't handle the caretaking. The children had gone with her. Thomas had been moved to an assisted living facility in 2018. His cognitive function had never fully recovered. He could speak, walk, feed himself, but he wasn't the same man. Would never be the same man.
I found his current facility online, a place called Sunnyvale Care Center, about 40 minutes from our house. I drove there on a Saturday morning while Sarah thought I was at the gym. I don't know what I expected. Closure? Absolution? Some kind of confrontation that would make everything clear? What I got was a middle-aged man in a wheelchair staring out a window at a garden he didn't seem to see. "Can I help you?" A nurse appeared beside me. "Are you here to visit Thomas?" "I'm an old friend." The lie came easily. Too easily. From before. "Oh, how nice. He doesn't get many visitors these days." She smiled sadly. "His kids came by last Christmas, but other than that..." She left me alone with him. I stood there for a long time, looking at the man I'd almost killed, the man whose life I'd destroyed without even remembering it. "I'm sorry," I whispered. He didn't respond, didn't turn around, just kept staring at the garden. I should have confessed right then. Should have called the police, turned myself in, finally given him the justice he deserved. But I thought about Oliver, about Sarah, about the life we'd built on the ruins of Thomas's, and I walked away, just like I'd walked away 11 years ago. I was still a coward. I couldn't tell Sarah I knew. That was the impossible part. I'd discovered her secret by invading her privacy, reading her hidden documents, violating her trust. If I confronted her, I'd have to admit what I'd done. And then what? She'd confessed to her friend that telling me would destroy everything. She'd spent 10 years protecting me from this truth. If I suddenly revealed that I knew, that I'd always been the villain of the story, what would happen to us? But I also couldn't pretend, couldn't look at her across the dinner table and act like nothing had changed, couldn't make love to her, knowing she'd sacrificed everything for a man who didn't even remember his crime. The weight was crushing me, the same weight she'd been carrying alone for a decade. Now I understood. Now I felt every ounce of it. 2 weeks after finding the box, I snapped. We were having dinner. Oliver was talking about some video game, Sarah was nodding along, and I was pushing food around my plate, lost in the spiral of guilt that had become my constant companion. "James?" Sarah's voice cut through. "Are you listening?" "What?" I said, "Are you okay? You've been so distant lately." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You've been strange for weeks. Is it work? Is it..." She paused, fear flickering in her eyes. "Is it us?" Here's where I need to ask you something. What would you have done in this moment? Would you have confessed everything, the snooping, the discovery, the crime you didn't remember? Or would you have kept pretending? I'm still not sure I made the right choice. Drop your answer in the comments. Confess or pretend? I need to know what you would have done. I know. The words came out before I could stop them. Sarah froze. "You know what?" "I know about the accident, about Thomas Reeves, about what you did." Her face went white. "Oliver," she said carefully, not breaking eye contact with me. "Go to your room, please." "But Mom..." "Now." He left, sensing the shift in the air. Kids always know. When we were alone, Sarah's composure cracked. "How?" "I found the box. In your closet." "You went through my things?" "I heard you. Talking to Rachel. On the baby monitor. You said our whole life was built on a lie. I needed to know what that meant." She laughed. A broken, terrible sound. "So you violated my privacy to find out I've been protecting you? That's ironic. Why didn't you tell me?" "Tell you what, James? That the night before you proposed you nearly killed a man? That I found you wandering down the street like a zombie, covered in someone else's blood? That I made a split-second decision to save you instead of him?" Her voice rose with each sentence, 10 years of suppressed emotion flooding out. "I didn't remember," I said weakly. "I still don't remember." "I know you don't remember. That's why I never told you." She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. I thought if you didn't remember, maybe it was a mercy. Maybe you could live a normal life.
Maybe we could live a normal life, and one day it would stop mattering. Did it stop mattering? No. She collapsed into a chair. It never stopped. Every time I look at you, I see you stumbling down that street. Every time you laugh or smile or hold our son, I think about the man who can't do any of those things because of what you did, what we did. I knelt beside her. Why did you do it? Why did you protect me? She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. Because I loved you. Because I knew you weren't a monster. You made a terrible, stupid mistake. And I thought you deserved a second chance. She paused. Was I wrong? I didn't have an answer. We didn't sleep that night. We sat in the living room until dawn, talking more honestly than we ever had in 12 years of marriage. I told her about visiting Thomas, about the guilt that had been consuming me since I found out. She told me about the nightmares, the panic attacks, the time she'd almost confessed to the police. I came close once, she admitted, about 5 years ago. I'd written a letter, detailed everything, the accident, the cover-up, where they could find the evidence to convict both of us. What stopped you? Oliver. He was 4. I couldn't look at him and imagine him growing up with both parents in prison. She shook her head. I told myself I was protecting him, but I was really just scared. We've both been scared. Yeah. We sat in silence for a while. What do we do now? I finally asked. I don't know. What do you want to do? I thought about Thomas Reeves in his wheelchair, about his children who never visited, about the life I'd stolen from him. I thought about Oliver upstairs, sleeping peacefully, unaware his parents were criminals. I thought about Sarah, the woman who destroyed herself to save me. I want to make it right, I said, but I don't know how. There's no making this right, James. There's only living with it or not living with it. What does not living with it look like? She met my eyes. Confession, prison, losing everything. And if we keep living with it, we keep carrying the weight, both of us now, together. Her hand found mine. I've been doing it alone for 10 years. I won't lie. It would be easier if you helped carry it. This wasn't a decision I could make in one night. This was the rest of my life, the rest of my family's life, hanging in the balance. But I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to let Sarah carry it alone anymore. Together, I said. She squeezed my hand. For the first time in a decade, she didn't look quite so broken. 3 weeks later, I wrote Thomas Reeves a letter. I didn't sign my real name. I couldn't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I needed him to know that someone remembered, that someone was sorry, that his suffering hadn't gone unnoticed. Dear Thomas, you don't know me, but I know you. I know what happened to you 11 years ago. I know you were walking home that night, minding your own business, and someone took everything from you. I can't tell you who that someone was. I can't give you the justice you deserve. But I can tell you this. Not a day goes by that they don't think about you. Not a day goes by that they don't hate themselves for what they did. I've enclosed a check. It's not enough. Nothing would ever be enough. But please, use it for whatever you need. There will be more. Every month, for as long as you need it. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Someday, maybe, I'll have the courage to tell you this in person, to give you my real name and let you decide what happens next. But today, I'm still a coward. I hope you can forgive me for that too. I sent it anonymously, along with a cashier's check for $10,000. It was everything in our savings account. Sarah hadn't questioned it. She just nodded when I told her what I wanted to do. It's not justice, she said.
But it's something. It's a start. Every month after that, we sent another check. Sometimes 500, sometimes 1,000, whatever we could spare. I got a second job doing freelance coding on the side. Sarah picked up extra shifts at the hospital. We never told anyone why we were suddenly so broke. We just worked harder, spent less, and sent every extra dollar to a man we'd never speak to. It wasn't absolution, but it was something. 6 months after I found the box, someone knocked on our door. It was a Saturday. Oliver was at a friend's house. Sarah and I were doing yard work, trying to maintain some semblance of normal life despite everything. I wiped my hands and went to answer. A woman stood on our porch. Mid-40s, dark hair streaked with gray, eyes that looked like they'd seen too much. "Can I help you?" "Are you James Whitfield?" My blood went cold. "Who's asking?" "My name is Claire Reeves." She paused. "I think you've been sending my ex-husband money." I couldn't move, couldn't speak, just stood there like an animal caught in headlights. "I'm not here to cause trouble," she said quickly. "Can I come in? Please, I just want to talk." Sarah appeared behind me. She'd heard the name. "What is this?" Sarah asked, her voice tight. "I traced the checks," Claire said. "It took a while, but I'm a forensic accountant. It's what I do." The money orders were purchased at specific locations, always paid for in cash, but the pattern eventually led me here. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Please," Claire's eyes were filling with tears. "I've spent 11 years not knowing who did this to Thomas, not knowing why or who or whether they even felt bad about it. And then, 6 months ago, these checks started arising, anonymous, thousands of dollars, with a letter that—" She pulled a worn piece of paper from her purse. My letter. She'd kept it. "I need to know," she whispered. "I need to know if you're the one who hit him." The moment I'd been dreading for 6 months, for 11 years really, was finally here. I looked at Sarah. She was pale, trembling, but she gave me a small nod. Whatever I decided, she would stand with me. "Yes," I said, "I'm the one." Claire's face crumpled. And then she did something I never expected. She hugged me. "Thank you," she sobbed into my shoulder. "Thank you for finally telling the truth." Claire didn't call the police. I still don't entirely understand why. Maybe because the statute of limitations had long since passed. Maybe because she could see the guilt that had been eating me alive. Maybe because the money had paid for Thomas's care when the insurance ran out. Or maybe she'd just spent 11 years needing closure, and now that she had it, she didn't need anything else. We talked for hours.
I told her everything. The blackout, Sarah finding me, the decade of not knowing. She told me about the aftermath, the divorce, the years of struggling to keep Thomas cared for while raising 2 kids alone. "I hated you," she admitted. "For so long, I hated whoever did this. I imagined them out there living their perfect life while Thomas rotted in a facility. I imagined them laughing, forgetting, never even thinking about what they'd done. I wasn't laughing. I just didn't remember." "I know that now." She looked at Sarah. "You must have loved him very much to do what you did." Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I've regretted it every day, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat." Claire left that afternoon. She promised not to tell anyone, not for our sake, but for Thomas's. The money we'd been sending was the only reason he was still in a decent facility. If we went to prison, that money would stop. "Keep sending it," she said. "That's your penance. That's how you make it right." I've been making it right ever since. It's been 2 years since that conversation. Oliver is 11 now. He still doesn't know what his parents did, and maybe he never will. We've talked about telling him someday, when he's older, when he can understand the complexity of it, but not yet. Sarah and I are closer than we've ever been. There's something about shared guilt that either destroys a relationship or forges it into steel. Ours became steel. We visit Thomas sometimes, not as his attackers,
just as volunteers who read to residents at Sunnyvale. He doesn't know who we are. He'll never know. But we know, and we'll keep coming until we can't anymore. Is this justice? No. Is it enough? No. But it's what we have. It's what we can do. Some mistakes can't be fixed. Some sins can't be forgiven. You just learn to carry them, day after day, step after step, until the weight becomes part of who you are. My wife carried my secret for 10 years. Now we carry it together. That's not a happy ending, but it's an honest one. And after a lifetime of lies, honest is all I have left to give. That's my story. A story about secrets and lies and the people who carry them. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever discovered something about yourself you couldn't face? A mistake so terrible you couldn't admit it, even to yourself? And if you have, how did you learn to live with it? I'm still figuring that out, day by day. Drop your answer in the comments. Share your story. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that we're all carrying something. We're all walking around with weight we'll never put down. And maybe the only way to survive it is to know we're not carrying it alone. My wife kept my secret for 10 years. She did it out of love. I spent a decade not knowing who I really was. Now I know. And I have to live with him. Every single day. That's not punishment. That's just life. The question isn't whether you deserve forgiveness. The question is what you do while you're waiting to find out. That's my story. A story about secrets and lies and the people who carry them. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever discovered something about yourself you couldn't face? A mistake so terrible you couldn't admit it, even to yourself? And if you have, how did you learn to live with it? I'm still figuring that out, day by day. Drop your answer in the comments, share your story. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that we're all carrying something. We're all walking around with weight we'll never put down. And maybe the only way to survive it is to know we're not carrying it alone. My wife kept my secret for 10 years. She did it out of love. I spent a decade not knowing who I really was. Now I know. And I have to live with him. Every single day. That's not punishment. That's just life. The question isn't whether you deserve forgiveness. The question is what you do while you're waiting to find out.